member for Ottawa South has given notice of dissatisfaction with the response given by the Minister of Long-Term Care. The member for Ottawa South has 5 minutes to state his case, and the Minister or Parliamentary Assistant will have 5 minutes to reply. I recognize the member for Ottawa South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank you for being here this evening, the table, and everyone who's here. I do, in particular, want to thank the Minister for being here. It's not very often that a minister comes to a late show, save and except the Government House Leader, who I've seen here a few times, not just in this government, but in other governments. It would be something that should happen, I think, with a bit more frequency. So we've got a bit more time. The issue that I raised with the Minister was brought to me by a constituent who noticed in her walk around the Pearly Rideau Veterans Home vacant rooms, a large number of them. After I inquired to the Pearly and looked on their website, I found there were 120 vacant rooms out of 450. And I do understand that some of those rooms have to be used for isolation, both of COVID patients that would be inside and people coming in. But that's about 1/3 of those beds. So I wrote to the Minister, or we wrote to the Minister, and in advance of the question. And that was a message to the Minister, is that this is concerning. It doesn't seem right to me. And to the people I talked to, it just doesn't seem right. It doesn't feel right. And I was surprised that the Minister's answer wasn't, it doesn't feel right, let me look into that, and let me get back to you. That's all I needed to hear. There are people who are waiting, and they're suffering. And we have the same kind of situation of kind of a blanket ban with essential caregivers. And we found a solution to that, because the first thing was, for the first 2 months, nobody can go in. But then we realized we were doing more harm on the other side, and we weren't accounting for that. So the Minister and the Chief Medical Officer of Health found a way. And now essential caregivers, although there's still some challenges, even during an outbreak, can go into a home. So I'm just asking you to look at it through that same lens. And here's why. The Pearly is a particularly visible description of the problem. I've been told by numerous sources there may be 900 to 1,000 beds in Ottawa that are not occupied. Now, they're not all usable, but that's a lot of beds. And there are people who need to get out of hospital. We know we need to get them out of the hospital. And I just want you to look at that. I don't expect you to solve it tomorrow. We don't. The families don't. But what they do want is to say, I think we should find a way to do this. That's what I'm asking you. And I hope that you can do that. I think that you can do that. I think you have the power to advocate for that. And I'd ask you to do that. Now, the Minister's response to me was, you only built 641 beds. Well, the Minister knows that between 2003 and 2018, 30,000 beds, new beds, and rebuilt beds were built. I've talked to the FAO about this. So, and the Minister would also be aware, in my work before coming into government, on the redevelopment of St. Pat's Home and the additional beds given to St. Pat's Home, a project that took a long time. The Minister would be aware of that. The Minister would be aware of that. Or the work I've done with Hillel Lodge, or the Glebe Centre, or the Pearly, who were going to get new beds, but they got turned back. And also, at the beginning of this government, all those projects were slowed down. So we can debate that. They were stopped. That's what happens when you come to government. Doesn't have to happen, but it did happen. You became the Minister in June 2019. So I'm sure the Minister is going to have something to say to me about this, and that's good. I'm happy. It's not. I'm happy to hear that. It's not like we didn't do anything. It's not like we didn't invest in home care. It's not like we didn't build and redevelop beds. It's not like we didn't invest more money in health care than governments had previously, just like you claim right now. I'm acutely aware of all the things, and we all should be, of the things that we're not able to do for people. What I'm asking you right now is to do the thing that you are able to do for those families. You don't have to do it tomorrow. You just have to say, I'm going to try to do that. I think there's a way. And there is a way. I believe there's a way. And Minister, I do understand your files and appreciate how hard your work is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To reply to the member for Ottawa South, I recognize the Minister of Long-Term Care.
Thank you, Speaker. If the member for Ottawa South had taken the time to read the only 2 English daily newspapers in his region, he would have seen that the Pearlie and Rideau Veterans Health Centre's explanation of the issue in black and white. That explanation is clear. The admissions process has been complicated by the pandemic. The home, quite rightly, recognizes that it's critical to admit residents carefully. The home has experienced several outbreaks, and during outbreaks, homes cannot take new admissions. Newly admitted residents must self-isolate for 14 days, often necessitating one-on-one staffing, in a home where 120 staff are on leave due to factors surrounding COVID-19. The member indicates he doesn't think that should be the case, to which I would say he does not understand the complexity of this issue. He just doesn't get it. Does he think the home should not take a cautious approach to admissions in the midst of a pandemic? Does he think we should ignore public health advice? Does he propose to set himself up as the sole judge of what's appropriate in safeguarding the health and well-being of long-term care residents? Well, I'll tell you, we will not go back to the conditions of Wave 1. And it is stunning that he wants to take this sort of risk with the lives of our most vulnerable Ontarians. There must be cohorting room, there must be isolation rooms, and we must deal with the staffing crisis and the capacity issue that you left behind in your wake. The member for Ottawa South has frequently spoken of his anger on this issue, including this morning. And I would suggest through you, Speaker, that his anger is misdirected. The House will not need reminding that from 2011 to 2018, the Liberal government only created 611 net new beds, while the population over the age of 75 grew by over 170,000 people. Put another way, they met an increase in demand of over 20% with an increase in supply of 0.6%, less than 1% increase in supply. They failed to take action on developing new spaces and on upgrading old facilities, some of which dated back to the 70s. They failed to take action at the staffing situation in long-term care homes across this province as it became critical right before the pandemic. And they lacked the vision to expand community paramedic programs that give people peace of mind and 24/7 care they need to stay in their homes longer. It existed, you ignored it, you never bothered. A program which our government expanded last week. That neglect and the choices that the previous government failed to make to invest in long-term care, to invest in our most vulnerable population, to invest in capacity that was left to rot. That is your legacy. And the overall wait time in the Champlain-Lynn is
I didn't want to interrupt the minister, but I'm going to ask her to make a comment through the chair.
The overall wait time in the Champlain-Lynn is 206 days, and at the Pearlie Rideau alone, there are more than 1,000 people on the wait list and a median wait time of 334 days. This did not happen overnight. And what was the member of Ottawa South doing during that time? After being elected, he cheered it on from the backbenches for a year and then was appointed parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Health and Long-Term Care, where he praised that government's record even more strongly. He had the chance, he had the opportunity to make a positive contribution to long-term care, to use his seat at the table to make a difference and to push the needs of long-term care, the staff and the residents forward. But he didn't. He chose other priorities. His government chose other priorities. He chose to join the rest of the government in saying one thing and doing nothing. With a record like that,
Thank you very much. That concludes our adjournment today.